Welcome to the Coworking Values Podcast. I'm Emily Breeder. If you're a community manager struggling with reaching your audience, our latest offering is designed for you. In this 3-month cohort, we will help you build your community, learn practical strategies, and stay motivated with personalized guidance. Join us to transform your workflow and strengthen your community management skills. Look in the description of this podcast for more information on how to sign up.
Hi, this is Francesca from Virtual Headquarters here. We support co-working spaces throughout the UK and in Europe soon by promoting virtual office revenue for them. Not only that, but we offer to promote your co-working and your meeting room spaces to all of our clients throughout the UK. And the best bit is, we don't take any brokerage cuts. If you check out the show notes, there's a link to how our virtual office partnership works. And if you want to arrange a call with me, I'd be happy to discuss everything and talk you through the process. I hope to speak to you soon. Thanks.
Hello folks, it's your friend Bernie here and welcome to another edition of the Coworking Values Podcast. And in our luxury studio today is Hector. What are you known for, Hector, and what would you like to be known for?
Hey, I'm known for being one of the early guests on Bernie's original podcast. No, I'm kidding. I am probably known for a little newsletter I send out called thisweekincoworking.com. What I would like to be known for is the guy that helps Bernie remove the hyphen in co-working.
Yeah, I wish there were more people that said things like that at the beginning. So I want to set the scene because you were where? Could you remember the first time, Hector, that you fell into co-working?
Actually, I can. It was back in 2012. I was running a company that built white label Facebook games, if you can remember Facebook games back in the day, for ad agencies. I moved to Manchester from the little island of Cyprus. I moved back to Manchester from the little island of Cyprus and wanted to be around other creatives and found this thing online called Co-working by a company called Regis. I went and sold the space. It was an open plan office. They told me it was going to be filled with other startups. I signed a 12-month contract, and 6 months in, I was still the only person on the floor. That was my first touch with co-working. I said, this is a scam. This is BS. I'm leaving. I'm going to find something else and just get a private. I actually moved to a private office, I believe. And then in 2013, March, the island of Cyprus, the banks in Greece, and the banks in Spain all collapsed. And I flew back to Cyprus to see my clients and landed up taking over their empty offices that were gorgeous, full of beautiful decorations, great Wi-Fi, strong coffee, and turned them into makeshift co-working spaces. We filled them up within a week. And as they say, the rest is history. I've been involved with tech and running spaces and helping spaces since 2013.
I love it. I tell that Cyprus story a lot. I think the kind of rawness and catastrophe and what came out of it all is really interesting. And there's a lot of really good co-working spaces have started like that. Where did you? So let's fast forward. And what I really want to get into, because I'm on this, like, for a long time I've believed in this creator economy co-working conversation. And be a creator, not a consumer. And then John Alexander came along with his Citizens book, which is the end of the consumer story and the beginning of the Citizens book. And that's all, we'll link to podcasts and events we're doing around that. But can you tell us about what it's like to start a newsletter? And a lot of people listening to this know how fanatical I am about email, not email marketing, but email newsletters and that form of communication. So can you step out the journey? And a bit I really want to pull out of you, as far as you are comfortable, is the sustainability of that newsletter, because not everyone can be Seth Godin. So what's your path to that? Because you hear all these people go like, morning brew, 10 million people open it and it makes 10 billion a year. But what's it like for one guy in his apartment in New York emailing people like me?
So, it actually started by emailing people just like you. I think I sent the first, what became This Week in Co-working, to 6 people, including yourself. And the reason I kind of started it was because in 2020, if you can remember the chaos of 2020, there was a lot of uncertainty in the world, but there was also, anywhere you looked in the news, 3 brands, if at most, in the industry were being mentioned. However, through all the conversations we were having in COVID, all these kind of masterminds we were having, all these virtual get-togethers, there were so many operators building great businesses, great communities, making real impact, but nobody was telling their story. No one was kind of elevating or connecting these people who were doing similar things like childcare and co-working in churches. All of these groups were really operating on their own, and in pretty much a vacuum. So there wasn't really this big grand vision of building a media company for and with the co-working industry, but I wanted to tell those stories. I wanted to share it with folks who, like me, were just interested and wanted to see other ideas and know who to contact and connect with other people doing interesting things. So started by sending out to 6 people. It was 100% a passion project, and it's been a passion project until about earlier this year, where we eventually passed the 1,000 plus subscriber, and we launched a LinkedIn version, and it was completely unsustainable. If I wasn't running another business, if I didn't have other income, there's no way I would have been able to keep doing this. And if I didn't have the support of my loving family and the patience to allow me to keep doing it, I probably wouldn't have. But that brings me to where we are today, where I had to really assess, how do I shift from this is something that I do because I love it, to this is something that's sustainable, that's scalable, that is also available to the industry in more ways than just an email newsletter, but isn't reliant on just me. It isn't just, if something happens to Hector, if Hector goes to live in the mountains with the goats, the newsletter doesn't stop. The good that the newsletter does, the reach that it has, the support that it gives to co-working spaces doesn't vanish. And so I had to look really, really hard at what are the different business models for newsletters. Obviously, we know Morning Brew, folks like that, they sell adverts. It's a really good way to monetize the eyeballs reading a free newsletter. However, I also know, having run spaces and having been involved with co-working spaces for a very long time, we're constantly being sold to. So it was very, very quickly going to become a situation of either we find another route or we become a NASCAR, where we have 1,000 different adverts, 1,000 different sized banners, different logos spread across our newsletter, and people have to skip through all of that to get to the content they subscribe to get to. And that just wasn't going to work for me. So what I did instead is I tried to look at what other creators were doing. What were people in the music industry doing? What were people in other forms of content generation doing? And I landed on this idea of, wouldn't it be really, really cool if every or as many co-working brands as possible could all contribute a little bit per month and have a media channel that represented them. And that's where we kind of landed. We launched this set of tools called Brand Mode, but it's very much like a patron-based subscription. You pay a little bit per month as a brand, you get some additional tools, it is a business expense, and it is something that supports the work that me and my now team can do in the newsletter, in real life events, in multimedia, just to make running a space easier, more connected, and more successful.
How many, because I've been on a similar journey, and that's partly why we moved this whole podcast to Substack, because then we're in the creator economy land and the direct to creator land rather than the, exhausting sponsorship land. And that NASCAR thing is I do feel like that, and it seems it's not that there's anything wrong with sponsorship, but it's such a 2010 economic idea, and starting things with this pod. I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it was like a mainstream podcast, and it was 7 minutes by the time they got to the content. So it was a chef talking to Jazzy B from Soul to Soul, and that's why I hooked into it, because I wanted to hear what Jazzy B likes to eat. And I was amazed it took 7 minutes to get to the content. And I'm so annoyed, I'm saying that here, And I can't even. One advert was for Airbnb, and it wasn't out of place, and I just cannot tell you who the others are. But back to my question. Sorry, I went down a rabbit hole there. How many things did you have to try and test to get to where you are now? Because I think what you come up with is more forward thinking than a tip jar, buy me a coffee, and it's very relevant.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, obviously, the sponsored model, the advertising model, is one of the biggest pain points of the internet right now, right? Especially for creators. It's a good way to monetize, and I'm very, very grateful and thankful for all the sponsors who did come in and support the newsletter so far and continue to do so. Just to going back to kind of NASCAR thing, we're more like a football team. We have one main sponsor for a newsletter, and that is it. There's not going to be sprinkled ads throughout. There's not going to be this section by this section's brought to you by Nissan, like none of that, right? One sponsor per newsletter, and that's the only kind of sponsorship slot we have. Now, in working with those brands, we also found that a lot of people wanted to support the newsletter, but they didn't have that large of a sponsorship by now. They didn't really have anything they really wanted to promote to co-working brands, right? Maybe we're looking at like Jerome from Blank Spaces, or the team over at Work Life in Australia, or the team at Impact at Hub Australia. They wanted to support the work and the effort that goes into it, but they didn't really need to run an advert for anything. They didn't want to take that ad spot away or promote a specific product to their people. And so it was a bunch of iterations, really, of how do we get more people involved? How do we get them to feel like this is something that they can contribute to? They can choose which topics we do deep dives into. They can be more involved. They can choose whether they want to have quarterly meetups or monthly calls, but put them in the driver's seat so that they feel like this is their channel without, as you know, having them scroll for hours to get to the actual content. The whole point of the newsletter is to distill the chaos that is the noise in our industry into signals, into a list of 10, 15 things you need to know every week, and any other model would have broken that.
Yeah, I think that's I mean, partly I read it because it's you, but it is it is the least bullshitty roundup available. And it feels like, when you see all the people that are for this podcast and the London Co-working Assembly, we call people co-creators because we want to like actually do something with them rather than write a check. And then, that whole pay to speak model, which exhausts me, is I feel like people are part of what's going on, and that collaborative model is way more interesting for the people supporting it financially, and for the people reading it. It doesn't smell so, I've paid to be here. And when you log on to that, we'll put a link in the show notes to the page. It feels like, it feels like the gang, the family, when you see all the people involved there, and people are at different sizes, but it is I know the people from all of those organizations and companies, either directly or indirectly, because they're in that stream or area of the internet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely about co-creating. I think you nailed it on the head there. It's about having them be engaged, but it's also about, giving brands who want to support a way to do so. Tip jars are a great idea, but it also kind of feels unsustainable in itself. Like, if you want, this is one of the major problems with the internet, right? You want great content, you want great resources, you want great insights, but as we see with all the main media these days, it's really, really difficult to monetize that, right? You either have to charge a subscription, which limits the reach and the impact of the words you send out each week, or you have to find a way to monetize through sponsors or ads or advertorials or that kind of thing. And I think we land in a kind of happy medium. As I said, some of the brands who we work with, who we call our patron brands, who contribute to our impact each month, are folks like Patch over in the UK, Clockwise, Coworking Canada, Decama over in the Netherlands, DenSwap here in the US, CoHatch, CoWorks, a whole bunch of really cool brands who want the newsletter to exist and can do so through a sort of Patreon style subscription.
And I think the other thing is it's really hard to find. I've read this for years, and we talk about it at Right Club and all these other freelancer meetups and stuff and events we've been to, like to find that thread that is enough people will pay for because it's, they want it to exist. I think is it Seth Godin? It's like, if people went away, would they miss you? Because if you're writing another like roundup of AI links or something, there's enough people doing that if you dropped off the face of the earth, no one would notice. So to find that thread is a real skill. So well done.
Thank you. It definitely comes down to the stories I share. Yes, we painstakingly built a system and a process to get and make sure we keep finding stories from around the co-working world, more stories from Africa, more stories from Asia, more stories from South America, and Australia, obviously. But also just telling those stories, they need to exist, right? So it wasn't for the people running spaces and sharing their experiences, their insights, their tips, so that I can then reshare. There wouldn't be anything to share. And so it's definitely thanks to them. And that's why I really wanted them to be a part of what we're building at This Week in Co-working.
As we're talking, I keep on trying to rack my brains for like a real life example. It will come to me. But also it takes a lot to put a newsletter together. And I've been emailing like non-stop for 16 years now. And now, after lots of trying and testing, and both you and I love gadgets, apps, links, and Zapier things, but I've got it down to, I can do it really fast, but it's taken a long time to get there. And what would you say to people who go, I need a newsletter because it's one of the best things you could ever do for your business or your, personal brand, if you like. But what would you tell people to do, and what would you tell people not to do starting out?
Definitely write as if you were writing, as if this email was going to arrive in your inbox on the worst day of your week, right? What would you want to see if you open that email, and write towards that as opposed to writing towards some business goal. Especially in co-working and communities, we see a lot of people sending out newsletters that are buy our product, buy this, upgrade to this. It's like there's a space for that, and that's in the transactional email world and the kind of follow-ups and automation world. But newsletters should be about telling stories, connecting with people, because back in the day, emails landed on people's computers. Now they arrive in their pockets, right? And you're going to be interrupting them on their way to a meeting. It's going to arrive as they're kind of looking at their financials, as they're going to pick up their kids, as they're playing with their kids, right? So you have to be really, really cognizant of the fact that whatever you're sending, try to get it to be as valuable as possible, firstly, but also as sustainable as possible for yourself. Because as people love to say, email newsletters, just like podcasting and all other media, comes down to consistency. If you cannot commit to sending out a newsletter on a cadence that makes sense to you, then reassess, right? You don't have to send a daily newsletter like you do. You don't have to send a weekly newsletter like I do. You can send a monthly roundup. You can send a quarterly roundup, right? Just start with finding a cadence that works for you, and then focus on what would you like to read? What would you like to have seen in this email? If it's about, toy trains, and you have a passion for toy trains, then write a newsletter that shares the things that you would have liked to see. I also probably would say, if you're more gifted with writing and you have the privilege of more time to write, maybe kind of lean towards more opinion pieces than curation pieces. Curation pieces are very, very difficult because the news is constantly moving. News and events are probably the hardest things to build a media company around, because as soon as they are out, they start decaying. Whereas opinion pieces, especially if you're talking about something that's more evergreen, like why this toy train is the best toy train so far, or why this type of Christmas tree is the best Christmas tree for sustainability reasons, it's very, very difficult to know that as soon as you click send, the value of that email decays over time. And that's something I had to really, really struggle with over the last couple of years, because the newsletter is called This Week in Coworking. If you open it a month from now, yeah, there might be some tidbits in there, but it's not going to be as useful as if you open it the week I sent it. And that's a really, really tricky place to be in. And it's why, if you go to the website now, we have brand profiles, we have context, we have kind of trend highlighting, which makes that, it kind of solves the problem with sending out news-based newsletters. But that took almost 4 years to build, right? And it needed to have a bank of 4,000 plus links that we summarized, mentions of brands over the last 900 plus days. So it took that consistency to get to a point where we overcame the first challenge.
That's great. It is that opinion versus being on the ball. Like all the things I've been around and I've either blogged about or podcasted about, being on the latest thing is, I don't like it. I'd like to like it. I'd like to be good at it, but I just tap out. It's exhausting. And, gobbing off in an evergreen manner is much more my style. But, imagine working in a TV newsroom. Like, it's a massive buzz, and I love the idea of it, but I couldn't keep it going like that, and I would get very jealous of people. I would, someone would say this trend in co-working, and I'd go and have to research the whole thing. And then by the time I've researched the whole thing and could talk about it, it's just moved on 10 seconds and I can't hack it, man. So, well done. What about that hyphen? Come on, let's get to the hyphen thing that you posted in.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously I've got a bunch of different ways that we curate news in, right? And sometimes it comes from people submitting it. Thank you to all the subscribers and people who constantly send in links that they find interesting. They are a huge support for the newsletter, and I thank them all from the bottom of my heart. We have a bunch of algorithms that go out and fetch interesting articles. And a lot of it comes from kind of SEO and searching and looking on the internet and what people are talking about and into different feeds. Now, there has been a kind of pet peeve with a bunch of people in co-working, for good reasons, that there's no hyphen in co-working. But what I've seen from when journalists talk about co-working, or folks outside the industry are sharing observations about the industry, or people are trying to market into the industry or support the industry, they lean on what the last time they saw the word written, and sometimes that's with a hyphen. The problem is it's terrible for SEO. The post you're talking about, you can share in the show notes if you'd like, looks at the search volume for co-working as a search term without a hyphen compared to with a hyphen. And the difference is astronomical. More and more results and search trends are being sent without the hyphen. So if you just think about distribution of your news or distribution of your article or your marketing or the piece of content you put together, putting a hyphen in it automatically puts you at a disadvantage. Like, why kind of handicap or trip up your chances of distribution by sliding in a hyphen when you could just share without and enjoy more kind of organic reach?
And because you type without a hyphen, that's one less character you need to type. So you're actually saving time by typing. But there's another because that I knew that when you shared it yesterday, and I tell people that, and I hadn't checked the data for ages. So we'll put the photo in the show notes so you can see how what a hockey stick curve it is. But also I think I've just found, and this is me being me, that the people that put the hyphen in there are the people that are trying to co-wash their slightly mediocre serviced office, and there's jumping on it, and it's not that kind of core intent co-working community thing. And I don't want to sound like someone from 2014 getting all upset because someone in a big glass building's opened a co-working space, but there is a way of, if someone's written it without the hyphen, that's that lot. And if they've written it with the hyphen, it's that lot. It's a kind of unconscious signal that people send out.
I kind of agree with that, but I also think that's a little bit exclusionary to people who want to write about the industry or who are interested in the industry and have great insights and have great resources to share or stories to share, but just don't know any better, right? And it's our job to kind of keep reminding it. The reason I wrote the post yesterday was mostly because a young journalist wrote a really cool story about how the co-founder of Industrious went from studying anthropology through a hedge fund to then eventually building Industrious. And it was a pretty cool story to read, but if I had not picked it up, I would have missed it because it had a hyphen in it, right? And so it's also just about this visibility. The AP style guide says it's without a hyphen. All the industry leaders keep telling journalists it's without a hyphen. But that isn't enough to get a media organization to change that. What changes that is hits, discoverability, search volume. And I'm hoping that by spinning the benefits that way, we'll see more and more editors make that decision to remove the hyphen to better position the content. And I'm not even going to get into the whole topic of taxonomies and terminologies, because what is co-working is enough for a podcast series. What is and what isn't co-working. So I'm definitely not going to get into that with you today. But I do get where you're coming from. There is a clear difference between some of the press releases put out by more corporate facing brands as opposed to those targeting more community side or community based spaces. But I think we should all just be using co-working and then subdivide from there.
That's a significantly more mature and inclusionary approach to me. But that's why I've resisted talking about this, because at least twice a week, I see the hyphen and I go, oh, and it seems like quite petty. It seems like a pedantic keyboard warrior, because I'd hate you to think that's what I am, but going, well, you should take the hyphen. And there's so much, like, especially this year, there's so much going on in the world. Like, it seems like a very first world problem to be getting upset about where the hyphen is. But in order to like spread the love around in whatever shape, size, or intent of your co-working space, because now, like, it is in a really important part of local economies. Because one of the best things I think that happened from the whole COVID era is people stopped commuting, and places like Patch and Town Square, and I'm sure there's others that I cannot remember off the top of my head, in the UK have brought co-working to the neighborhoods, and that is a really, really good thing. So it's much more of a, mainstream local economy play than this like cool little hacker space around Old Street that, you and I first knew, in bathtub to boardroom,
Yeah.
It's evolved a long way. So have you got anything more to add to that? Because my helicopter's on double yellow lines outside and I can see the traffic coming.
No, I think you're right. Co-working has become more a part of hyperlocal economies, but also a part of communities. Even here in the US, we're seeing a whole bunch of spaces where the co-working space is a gathering space. It's not only about the work. It's not only about coming there to put your headphones on to get some work done in between dropping off kids or whatever. It's become a part of how humans are designing their work ecosystems or their work networks, shifting away from coffee shop, maybe combining coffee shops and co-working and offices and all these pieces to make an ecosystem of places that they can get stuff done, or connect or meet people, whatever it is. And that means we have to be discoverable. It means we have to be able to find and share news using a common taxonomy or the description. And it definitely plays into it. I think we really need to just figure out co-working belongs to everyone, and then there's different types of co-working.
Beautifully put. Where can we find you online, Hector? Where's the best place?
Best place to find me online is for everything we've just discussed at thisweekincoworking.com. Absolutely no hyphens in that. And from there, you'll be able to find all the other things I do. If you do run a space and you are absolutely frustrated with how blocked your teams are jumping between apps all day, check us out at syncaroo.com. That is my day job. That's what keeps my lights on and allows us to keep operators focused on their communities instead of staring at screens all day. And
we can link to the white paper you did with Patch about how you save them a lot of time and money in the show notes.
Absolutely. Love supporting them.
Which will be I'm emotional about how much time and money they saved by hanging out with Hector and Rob for a little bit. Thank you very much, folks. If we'll put links in the show notes to not everything we spoke about here, but like most things. And if you go to in the show notes also is a link to the massive LinkedIn group, which was, fun fact, started by the same chap who invented the hashtag. And we're trying to get that group going, folks. There's people in there, and we're putting more and more stories in there. And like Hector said early on in here, what makes a group like that is not adverts and pitching. It's real life stories from real life people doing stuff in their co-working space from all shapes and sizes. So thank you for your time and attention today. Have a remarkable day. Be careful out there. It is a jungle.